A monk asked one question. Everyone became silent. Many years ago, in a peaceful kingdom surrounded by mountains and rivers, there lived a king who was known for his power, wealth, and influence. His palace was magnificent. Golden pillars stood tall. The floors were made of polished marble, and the royal court was always filled with ministers, scholars, soldiers, and advisors. Every day, people from different parts of the kingdom came to the palace with their problems, requests, and ambitions. The king solved disputes, planned battles, and managed the kingdom with confidence. From the outside, his life looked perfect. But deep inside, the king often felt restless. He had wealth, power, and respect, yet something always felt incomplete. One day, the king heard stories about a wandering monk who traveled from village to village. This monk had no possessions. He carried no gold, no weapons, and no expensive clothing. He only carried a small bag and wore simple robes. Yet people said that whenever the monk spoke, people began to see their lives differently. Farmers, merchants, soldiers, and even scholars gathered around him to listen. Some said his words brought peace to troubled minds. Others said his stories made them question the way they were living. Curious about this mysterious monk, the king decided to invite him to the palace. A message was sent across the kingdom asking the monk to visit the royal court. A few days later, the monk arrived. The day he entered the palace, the entire royal court gathered to see him. Ministers sat in their places, scholars waited quietly, and warriors stood proudly beside the throne. Everyone expected the monk to look impressive, but when he entered the palace hall, people were surprised. He looked simple. He walked barefoot. He wore old robes. There was nothing special about his appearance, yet something about his calm presence made the entire room silent. The monk walked slowly toward the center of the court and bowed respectfully to the king. The king welcomed him with honor. "Master," the king said, "I have heard many stories about your wisdom. People say that when you speak, people begin to understand life more clearly." The monk smiled gently but said nothing. The king continued, "Today, I have invited you here so that you can share your wisdom with everyone in this court." The ministers leaned forward. The scholars prepared themselves to listen carefully. Everyone expected a long speech filled with deep knowledge, but the monk simply looked around the room. He observed every face. He looked at the warriors, the ministers, the scholars, and finally the king. Then he asked a simple question. "If death comes tonight, how many of you are truly ready?" The moment those words were spoken, the entire palace became silent. The warriors who had fought many battles suddenly looked uncertain. The ministers who always had answers could not say a word. The scholars who spent their lives studying philosophy remained quiet. Even the king lowered his head, because everyone understood the meaning behind the question. The monk waited for a moment and then spoke again. "Every morning people wake up and start running. Running after money, running after power, running after success. But very few people stop and ask themselves why they are running." The court listened carefully. The monk slowly walked across the hall as he continued speaking. People believe that happiness is waiting somewhere in the future. They believe that once they become successful, rich, or powerful, they will finally start living. But life does not begin in the future. Life is happening right now. The king listened carefully. For the first time in many years, he felt that someone was speaking the truth without fear. The monk continued, "Most people are not afraid of death. They are afraid because when death comes, they realize they never truly lived." These words shocked the entire court. The king slowly raised his head. The monk looked at him and asked another question. "If you knew that you had only 1 year left to live, would you spend your days the same way you do now?" The king remained silent for a moment. Then he answered honestly, "No." The monk nodded. "Then why wait until the last year of life to start living properly?" The royal court fell silent again, because deep inside, everyone knew the monk was right. Most people postpone life. They say they will follow their dreams after they become successful. They say they will spend time with their loved ones after they become rich. They say they will find peace after they achieve everything they want. But someday often becomes never. The monk continued his lesson. Life is temporary. One day everything will disappear. The palace, the power, the wealth, everything. But the way you live today is what truly defines your life. The king felt something change inside his heart. He realized that despite all his achievements, he had spent most of his life worrying about power, enemies, and success. He had forgotten to simply live. Before leaving the palace, the monk shared one final message. Every morning, ask yourself one question. If today were the last day of your life, would you live it the same way? If the answer is no, then something in your life needs to change. The monk quietly turned and walked out of the palace. No applause followed, no celebration. Only silence filled the royal court. Because sometimes, one simple question is enough to change the way we see life forever. If this story made you think differently, take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need this reminder today, and subscribe to the channel for more meaningful stories like this.